Power BI desktop. So we'll cover all of that, and I'll keep the slides as something we can distribute afterwards. But just a bit of background to myself, as I was asking for. So I work with Chris Barber at Avanade, and like Chris, I'm an accountant and also an MVP. I don't think there's very many. I think it might just be me and Chris, who are kind of Power BI focused accountants and MVPs. I know Rory, who's presenting tomorrow, is also an accountant and MVP as well, but probably a bit more focused on the kind of Power App side. Yeah, two main communities that I kind of run at the moment. One is Learn Data Insights, which is all about courses and quizzes to help people prepare for Microsoft exams. And the other is Power Platform Finance, which we've been talking about a bit in the group. So last year we ran about 20 webinars, ranging from everything from some of these third-party tools that we were talking about today. So Arcteris, Power on BI, and ValQ, which is released InfoRiver. So some of those, and also people like Imka coming in and doing some kind of financial modeling in Power BI. So if you go to powerplatformfinance.com, you can have a look at some of those webinars. This year we've got a group of about 10-12 people, some of whom are in the chat today, where we're running through how to build Power BI reports for finance, but all the way from the ground up with, much more complex data sets, much more complexity. And, the idea is to build this out with examples like Mira was mentioning before. So, I'm looking to really, engage people who have really good examples of stuff to show in finance, so we can think about how you could solve those kind of challenges with Power BI. So you don't have to be part of that group. If you do have some examples and things you want to share, please reach out to me, and happy to have a chat about it. So let's go straight into kind of the session now. And you'll see that I shared the link in the chat earlier, and I can put it in the chat again. It's just aka.ms PBI income statement. And this is where, if you want to either follow along or take this data away and do it afterwards, you can just go to this page and download the data there. I say it is quite simple data, and that's intentional, but hopefully it will give you a flavor for what you can do. So when you download that data, you'll have a zip file and it will download some finance data. So we have their monthly results, and here we have extracts from, say, an ERP system each month. So there might be, say, a Power Automate flow or something that puts these in there. There's a manual extract that gets placed. And we also then have our reference data table. So I'll just show you these in Excel. So here we have, this is what our monthly data looks like. So we have a date, and then we have different keys. So it's already quite well structured. We've got keys for our organization, department, scenarios, so actual or budget, accounts, and then the amounts in USD. So we've already done the currency conversion and everything at source. Obviously, that is something if we wanted to, say, analyze the effects of exchange rates, or we wanted to just display them dynamically, we could potentially do some of that currency conversion in DAX. But for just reporting, you might as well do it, as someone said earlier, as far downstream as possible if you don't need that kind of flexibility on the modeling layer. And then the other data we've got is links to that is our reference data. So here we have all of our accounts. So our account keys, and then type, and here we've got kind of which headers they align to. So this is just income statement data. So which kind of top level of the income statement does it relate to? And then actually what would we go down to in the next level, and what would we go down to in the level below? And do we want to show detail? Do we want someone to be able to drill down? So potentially, does it have more levels down? So this is what we could use in what's called kind of a ragged hierarchy. So our accounts is kind of the main one, and we've got this kind of hierarchy here, but as we'll show, it's quite useful to actually supplement this with our own layout for the financial statements, as kind of Chris alluded to as well. So we've got a few other what are known as dimension tables. So we've got dates, we've got departments. So these are the department keys and what they relate to. We've got organizations. And here we've got the currency code. So if we wanted to show things, we've got local currency amounts as well. So if we wanted to show it local currency, we've got that flexibility here as well. And our two scenarios are just actual and budget. And then the other table we've got here is headers. And I've just changed this actually, because in there, if you download the data, it will say type 1 and 'I've just changed it to call it total, running total. And then where it's neither of those, it's the percentage. So just to explain kind of what this table is, even though we have our GL accounts here, and we could show, this on a matrix, so we could show revenue, we could show cost of sales, we could show operating expenses, taxes. What we actually really want to is to get to the kind of financial statement that Chris showed in his example. And that is where we can then actually have our lines with, subtotals in there, or lines of calculations within the income statement. Now, if we just rely on this, we won't be able to show those lines because there isn't a line that relates to net profit. There isn't a line that relates to gross profit. So actually, those are calculated items. So what we can do to help us here is have another table that's just kind of that layouts for what we want for our income statement. And this is what, again, Chris was showing earlier around the layouts that we need. So these are the lines that we want on our income statement in this order, because the order is very important. And when we come to lines like net sales, this is just a running total calculation. And when we come to gross margin, again, it's just a running total calculation. When we come to gross margin percentage, it's actually a different calculation. It's actually your gross profit over your revenue. So actually, we've defined that as a separate calculation. So that's our calculation type. So what this allows us to do is make that metadata driven, because the other advantage of this is actually, as as we were looking at before, there were a few questions about, we can have different income statements. We can have different statements for different business units or for different scenarios. So actually, we could add another column in here that just says FS type, and here we could have, this is all type 1. That's what we want on our income statement if we're looking at type 1 for a particular business unit, or actually if we're looking at type 2, different business unit or different way of looking at it, maybe we don't have revenue first, maybe we have another line that is something else, and actually that relates to its own calculation, or maybe it relates to something else. So but the idea is to build that flexibility into here. We can have a table like this which will allow us to be metadata driven. So are there any questions on that before we kind of dive into the detail about how we build this? Actually, and I see a question, I think this was from the previous session on slowly changing dimensions. And Chris Barber has actually done a really good video on this, where he's talked about slowly changing dimensions. So Chris, if you could pull out the link to that, please, and put that in the chat.
Thanks, Rishi. Yeah, I'll stick it in the chat.
Cool. So yep, okay, so let's dive into data. So just before we do, let's just have a look at how we might do something like this in Excel, and this kind of gets across some of the benefits I think Chris was talking about earlier, where obviously you've got things like row level security, you've got things like the automation, but if you think about the processes you'd have to do if you got this data each month and you had to build income statements with prior periods and prior years, you'd have to bring all of this data into one big table in Excel. So lots and lots of copying and pasting, manual processes around that, lookup formulas to link all of these keys into what their items are, because it all needs to be in one big table. And then you'd start building sum ifs formulas to start to bring out your amounts. And then actually maybe your prior year relates to a different file. And if you've got lots of data, this is already going to be really unperformant. It's error prone. You've got lots of challenges with building your income statements or your financial statements this way in Excel. So a much better approach is to build your data model in Power BI, and then you can always link to it, like Chris showed there, with cube formulas. And also things like, if you wanted to create different cuts of this income statement for different regions, you traditionally have a macro that would go and split out all your data and churn out different reports. Whereas with row level security, you can just have assign people to different roles, and then they'll see those different views of the income statement that's relevant to them. So lots and lots of benefits, I think, of using Power BI for this kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, one of the challenges is it's not very straightforward to kind of get this exact layout, to get the formatting, to get exactly to look exactly how you would be able to do it in Excel. it's not entirely straightforward to do that in Power BI. So you kind of have to know a bit about what you're doing there. What was that comment, Fernando? The previous me. Never mind. Okay, so we've got that data now. This Excel file. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I did product control. I didn't do a huge amount of accounting. I've always kind of lent towards the tech side. But yeah, I think Chris has got more actual experience of doing some of this stuff than I have. But what we'll do, we'll start with a blank Power BI file, and let's just open up Power Query Editor. And what I'm going to do first is just create some parameters for us to be able to set things. And this is good practice to do because what it allows us to do is avoid hard coding. And Power Query by default just loves hard coding everything. And what that makes it really difficult for someone else to pick up, and B, if something changes and or even in your data, things will just break. So one of the ways to try and maintain future proofness of the solution is to try and avoid the hard coding, and setting parameters of things is one way that we can do that. So if we go into here, I'm going to set two parameters, one for the link to where our monthly CSV files are. So I'm just going to put a link to that, and then obviously if someone else opens this file, they're not going to have this folder path, but they can just change the parameter, and hopefully everything else at that point should still work. Monthly results folder. I'll put it as type text, just because actually that way, if it's set to text, you can update it in the service. And parameters in DAX measures are slightly different. It's variables. It's not quite the same thing, but a similar kind of concept, I guess. And then also going to create one more for our reference data. And I'm going to link directly to this file. So I'm just going to do that. Reference data file. So again, let me just close that. So now this is our data file. Great. So now we've got our two parameters, and we can. I like to put things into groups, your queries. So let's put our parameters into its own group. Now what we want to do is we want to combine all the data that we have in our finance data and our monthly results in here. So one of the ways that we could do that, so obviously if we were doing this in Excel, this is your typical task for a macro. But with Power BI, we can just connect to the folder, which we now define as a parameter, and it will automatically combine all the files. So each time a new file is placed in there and the dataset refreshes, it will pick up all the any files in there. So if there's a new file in there, it will pick it up as well and automatically combine it into a single table. So really powerful just for thinking about those basic finance processes. This is a massive time saver, massive automation for finance teams. So if we go to data sources, and we go to folder, and we choose here the parameter, we can just connect straight to that monthly results folder and click on transform data. And I like to just have these queries as kind of staging queries. So one query that just connects to your data and doesn't apply any further transformations. So we could just call this staging, and it's monthly results. We'll load on it because we don't want to load this. And then we reference this query. So now we can actually have our monthly results. So now we can just take this as a source. And actually, we're not really doing any transformations here anyway. We're just combining them, but just splitting them out in this way will just, again, one of those things that will just make it easier to understand in the future and avoid errors. You can see where things are coming from a little bit more. But all we're doing here, so this will just automatically combine. So it's this double expand. It will automatically combine it. What it does is creates a function for you, and you can modify that function or indeed create your own function. So if you wanted to do something to those files before combining them, if you wanted to remove the header rows and apply some transformations to it, you could do that essentially within the function. But again, as I say, we're working with quite a simple data set here, so nothing too crazy. So now this is our data, and you can see it's all automatically combined. Results, and so again, I'm just going to move these into separate groups, and this is just folders, ways of organizing our query. So we'll create one for staging, and we'll create one for our fact table, which is results, or let's call this finance data. Actually, I think that makes more sense, doesn't it? Finance data. And I actually, with my fact tables, I like to put an underscore at the beginning of them, so actually in the fields list they appear at the top, and that's there. So now we can connect to the reference data, so we can go to Excel workbook, and it doesn't actually give you the option here to use a parameter, which is a bit of a shame, so we have to go and kind of browse for it and then find it ourselves. I haven't seen that on ideas.powerbi.com, but now the site has been revamped. I think that's a good opportunity to try and find that. So let me just navigate to that, and I'll show you how we can actually reference that parameter in a minute. So now we've got our all those Excel tables that we have in the Excel file. So I'm just going to select either the tables or the sheets. So actually, let's just select the I should say this is the sheets, sorry. Let me select the tables. So it's actually a good idea to have your data formatted as tables, and then they come up like this. So that way, they auto expand when data's added to them, rather than just referring to a sheet, which might have, some hidden cell value somewhere, and then it brings in all these excess columns and rows that you don't need. So connect to the tables, bring those in. And you will notice, let me put again these as a group. I'm not sure why my machine's just decided to freeze a little bit.
Just while it's freezing, Rishi, there was a question in the chat about why did you use a reference to the query rather than using the original?
So it's just splitting out your steps. So obviously within one query in Power Query, you can connect to data, you can apply any transformations, you can do lots of different things. But actually, if you split them out into separate queries and then just reference it, when the Power Query engine evaluates it, all it will do is look at the reference queries and stack them upon each other. So as far as it's concerned, it's the same thing. But from our perspective, it makes it easier. And we can also then use staging queries in relation to other tables. So when you start doing things like mergers and joins, if you're starting to do everything in the same queries, you're going to end up in hot water quite quickly. Whereas if you start to use staging queries, and then you reference those staging queries into different branches, you can do mergers and joins, for example, between the branches. You can't do a merge or a join within the same branch. So when you reference it, it creates another branch of it. So I probably haven't explained that very well, but essentially, staging queries are a good way of kind of just splitting out your data sets. I don't know what's going on there, but anyway. Okay, but what I'll do, if we click on here, we'll see that actually it's still hard coded, the files, because we connected to it. And I think if the Power BI team just fixed something like that, very simple, it would save a lot of pain for people. But anyway, what we can do is we can actually, I learned this trick from Patrick and Guy in a Cube video. I saw this a few months ago. You can actually go to your data source settings. You can see it's referencing the Excel data file. Click on change source and change it to reference the parameter, which is reference data file. And now if we go back like magic, you'll see hopefully that these sources all change now to say reference data file. So that way, if that file changes in the location or anything like that, you can just update that once. And let's just move this to a new group. Where did I use those parameters? So I used them in the drop downs when I connected to the data sources. So when I connected to a folder, it said, copy in or browse to the folder location. I said, no, actually, I just want to use the parameter value for the folder location. And then for the Excel file, it didn't give me an option to connect to a parameter value. So I had to just connect to the Excel file, browse to the Excel file, and then change the data source settings so it links to that parameter instead. So we've got our data in here now. And what was the name? I'll take it out. It was Patrick LeBlanc did one, who's one of the guy in the queue, obviously. I think it's just called something like mind-blowing bananas trick or something like that. He calls it. I'll try and find the exact video that I will do. Brilliant. Okay, so now we have our data loaded in, and I've set it here to automatically detect relationships, and with this kind of data, that makes my life a bit easier because the names are named, things are named the same, organization key, department key. When you don't have stuff that's neatly named like that, just turn that option off and do it yourself, because the last thing you want is for it to create a whole bunch of relationships for you, and then you have to go and undo those or figure out when it's done. So here, what we can do, it hasn't created this relationship between dim headers and dim accounts. But if you remember here, so dim headers was our lines of our income statement, and actually they relate to one of the fields. Yeah, there you go, that's the one. It relates to one of the fields in here called header assignment. So in our GL accounts map to one of those lines. As I said before, this might not always be the case. You might have a very different hierarchy in your GL accounts table that actually has nothing to do with how you report financial statements. And actually, you might need to do some categorizations to say, account keys 50 to 100 relate to this, 200 to 300 relate to this. And then you could use some of the techniques like Bob Duffy's example that Chris was showing earlier, things like that. But I mean, again, this is a very simple example. So one of the fields, one of the categorizations in our accounts table is to have that header assignment. So we can just create that relationship from there to header assignment. Great. Okay, so now we've got our data, and it's a nice, almost star schema. We've got a little bit of snowflake in here, and actually that's completely acceptable in this case because it's much easier to have this as a separate table than it is to try and bring it into here. And we'll see why when we do this. Right, so one of the first things we want to do actually is when we have our accounts here, we'll see in our finance data, if we click on it in here, we've got amount, and I think there are some negative ones in here, but let's assume they're all positive because say all of our data comes in as positive. But actually what we want to do is we want to show on our income statement, we want to show our credits as positive and our debits as negative, and then the opposite for the balance sheet. So actually it depends on what this account key is and what the type is. Is it an income? Is it an expense? Is it an asset? Is it a liability? So if we don't have that already, we can just create that quick mapping in source. But what we have actually on our accounts is we have a report sign. So actually this kind of says, if it's an income statement one and it's a debit, it will show it as negative. If it's a credit, it will show it as positive. So we've got 1 and a -1 here. So we could just do a SumX formula to say, as a measure, say, give me amount USD times the sign. But we could also do for something like this, just do it as a calculated column. And it's calculated columns, they tend to be overused, but I think for something like this, it's a bit more transparent, maybe than put it into a measure. So we're just going to call this amount with sign. And here we're just going to do amount USD times related. So this allows us to then get it's a lookup formula. It's like a VLOOKUP basically to say bring in the corresponding sign from our dim accounts table. So if we just add a column to do that, now this amount with sign is the column we need to use. So we can see this one's a negative and it's put it as a negative value. So this must be a debit, this account key that it relates to in the income statement. Any questions on that before I carry on? Nope. Okay. So now we can just create our measures. So we could do total amount equals sum amount with sign. So here, and now we can drag that on. And we could drag it on as just as a card or a bar chart, or we could put it into a matrix. And now we're starting to, if we put it into a matrix, we'll start to see how we can have what our income statement might look like, actually. Because if we could drag into here, we have a hierarchy. So we could drag in header from here as our top one, and we can see it's there. And actually, if you noticed as well, in the dim headers table, there was actually a specific order that we want to display these rows of the income statement. So revenue comes first, then net sales. So actually we can sort this by the order. So we click on the column, sort by column, sort by order, and then hopefully that will. Yep, so now we've got all of those. And total is actually our net profit in this case. So we can go through and change that. So if we do subtotals, we can actually call it net profit. Although actually, to be fair, we don't need to do this because as we'll see later, we've already got net profit as one of the lines we want to show. It's just not showing yet. And we can also then actually, if we want to do a hierarchy, if we want to drill down from our top level income statement line, we can use fields from our dim accounts table. So we could use subheader and subheader 2. And we'll see here that these now then we can drill down from revenue into discounts, gross sales, and actually even then a further level down if they go down even further to cost of sales. So we've already got now a very basic kind of income statement. A couple of things with this. Number one, it's for all time, which probably doesn't make much sense, or we should probably look at this on a monthly basis or quarter to date, year to date. And it's also just summing together lots of different things which make no sense. We're summing together actuals and budgets, for example. And the third thing actually is the formatting is not great. So let's just fix those in turn. So for a start, let's just put in year and month, and just put them as a simple drop-down slices or as a single slicer if we want to do that. So year, let's put it as a slicer, and let's do it, say it's a drop-down, and we want to show 2008. And we'll do the same thing. We'll just copy it actually. And got there, and we could do month. So slice it there. We could actually do them as a single slice and or put it as a hierarchy. And we've got the same problem at the moment which we saw, I think, in the dashboard in the day session, where it's sorting it alphabetically. So again, we can sort it by month number. This is why it's important to have this calendar table, so we can do things like get the right sort order for them. And I think we actually, I had this from the previous session. I had the June file in there, but actually one of the kind of tricks I can show, and I probably won't do it now out of interest of time, is that actually the June file was supposed to be a separate file, and when we put it in and refresh, you'll see it magically appear with June, but it's in there already. So my magic trick is spoiled there, but you get the idea. So now we've got our very basic income statement, and again, we said we're summing across lots of different things here. At least now we're looking at it for a month, but we're still summing things like actuals and budgets, which makes no sense. So rather than showing total amount, let's now build on top of these measures. So we could build a little chain of measures. So if we now do a new measure and we do total actuals, and we could do calculate, and now we just want to say give us our total amount, but for where our scenario table, dim scenario equals actual or actuals. We'll find out which one of those is correct. And now we can put in here total actuals. Nope, maybe it's actual. Yeah, actuals. So now that makes sense. We're not summing together actuals and budget amounts, so we don't need total amounts. That's just our base measure. And now we can go, as far as we want with this. So actually, let's just say, let's do our actuals prior year. And this is where we could use things like time intelligence, where we could say calculate our actuals for the same period last year. So and all we need to pass into this function is just the date table, which is dates, date, so the date field. That's all we need to pass in, because it's time intelligence. DAX will know if you've got a date table, and again, this is why you need a date table, to just use that to calculate the prior year value, and it understands the concept of that. So let's try that, see if that works. And it comes up with blank. Does anyone know why? Any thoughts on why, what I've done wrong there, or what I haven't done? No. So I think it's because I haven't marked it as a date table. Now you don't always need to do this. Yeah, so I have seen most cases actually where I don't need to do this. So I don't actually know why. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But anyway, select date, dim date, mark it as a date table, and now it brings us our prior year value. So this is for 2008 May. This is for 2007 May. What does same period last year do 29th of Feb? I mean, we're only looking at monthly data here. So as long as it's Feb, it will be Feb. If you wanted to do more specific in terms of look at, the last day in February, whether that's 28th or 29th, or, I've seen in some retail examples where they do, Chris will know this quite well, but, where they do, I want to see, the first weekend before Valentine's Day and how we did last year versus year before. You have to start using some custom calendars to do that essentially. And you could build some of that logic into your calendar so you can mark dates as specific things. But again, that's it also in my date tables, I tend to have offsets, because what you could do is do offset from today. So you could do, what's the day offset, month offset, year offset. And then actually that's another way to do time intelligence, where you could say, give me everything where the day offsets between -3 and -30. So it will give you, and you could use it for rolling averages and things like that. So it's a bit more custom and it's very easy to use. So it's not using time intelligence per se, but it's the same. It's building that feature yourself. So the last thing I was saying, actually, they don't look. Actually, let's just build this out a little bit more. So we've got our actuals, and we've got actuals prior year, and now let's just show that as a percentage. So again, we're building upon these. We're building a measure chain. Prior year variance. And here we can just maybe define a variance to say prior year variance equals total actuals minus actuals prior year, and then return divide our total our variance over the prior year value. So py variance divided by actuals prior year. I could have defined that as a variable as well to avoid that being calculated twice. And that's actually a percentage. And now I can show the percentage here as well. And yep, so what we can see here, our revenue's gone up 29% from last year. And this kind of thing is quite tricky to do in Excel, because you can start using things like pivot table formulas and things like that, but unless you're using Q formulas or something, it's just going to get quite messy, because Excel does row by row calculations, not necessarily group by group calculations. So that's what pivot tables do, or Power BI does. So yeah, we could do that. And then also, because we have these, we don't actually need to show all of the values on here. We can just show some of them. We don't need to show all the calculations that feed into it. And we can also just show, for example, if we have here, if we put in, say, account, and we want to see by which accounts have had the highest variance. And so if we now put into here, did I put it in here somewhere probably? Yep, actuals prior year variance. So we show this as a bar chart. And let's put some data labels on here. So now we can actually see that the biggest account actually is discounts. And you see now here, this is where we start to get to telling a bit of a finance story, because you're saying, hey, this is a great story. We achieved 29% increase in revenue. Brilliant. And then you start to look at actually what's driving that. And you say, well, actually, the reason you've driven such a high increase in revenue is because you've given so much discounts away. right? So, you've got a 201% increase in discounts, which has, led to an increase in revenue. So that's good. You've got that price elasticity, which means that works for you. But, maybe that's a dangerous strategy. Maybe that's something you wouldn't have seen had you not drilled into all of these things. So actually having these kind of visuals as well to go alongside your income statements, I think is really valuable for a finance audience. And especially because you can start to, cost filter. So you can say, I want to see all the accounts under operating expenses and see the variance of those. And actually, if you set this to cost filter, which is generally my preferred one, now you can see within operating income, your operating expenses went up 46%, but you can actually see that's not equal across all the accounts. Obviously, some of them have gone up a lot more, some of them have gone up a little bit less. So we could start to really get a view of what's driving the numbers, and change the finance team from just being this historical reporting to being much more insightful. And the other thing I said I'd fix on here was the number formats. So, what we accountants like to see things in a very specific way. So what I'll do is I'll just copy number format, which you can take from Excel, for example, and we'll go into here, into the relationships view, and don't ask me why it's in the relationships view. It makes no sense at all, but that's Power BI for you. We can highlight as many measures as we want in here, go and change the data category, not data category, sorry, format, put it as a custom format, and pass in our format string, which is basically saying show negative numbers in brackets, show it with a pound sign, and show it in there. So did I actually do that, or did I? No, sorry, I got out of that. Custom into your format string. Brilliant. And now we could see, hopefully, if that's worked. Did I not do that properly? Total amount, actuals. Oh, actuals per year. I should have done a variance. That was a percentage. Okay. I wonder why that hasn't shown up there. Okay, so it's updated per year. Maybe I think that was a different formula I used. But yeah, you see the idea here. It's now showing it to 0 decimal places with negative numbers in brackets. Most Excel custom formats are supported by Power BI. So there's a couple of Excel formats like in Excel that actually can show colors. For example, you can actually show in Excel, you can say, so the custom format string has semicolons, which says, what do you want to do for positive numbers? What do you do for negative numbers? And how do you want to show blanks? And there's a slight difference in how that works, because you can even put in Excel, you could put in square brackets red, and it will show negative numbers in red, whereas in Power BI that doesn't work. You do that through conditional formatting. But on the whole, yes. If you go to that Excel tab and you look at the format strings out of the box, you can just tweak those and put them in as your own format strings. And so yeah, I should put that one back as a percentage. But so you get the idea. Right now, do you know, because I'm going to go back and change that because that's going to annoy me. Yeah, so this is just going to be a percentage. Cool. Okay, so next, what we want to do is, oh, sorry, let me just plug in. Next, what you want to do is show not just data for a given month, but also quarter to date and year to date values. So I think there was a question on this in the last session. When what's useful to look at is not just what's my numbers for May, but what's my quarter to date and year to date numbers, both for this current year and for prior year, because actually you want to see how are you doing quarter to date or year to date this year compared to last year. And rather than writing, so let's have a look at how we could do that, and then we'll look at some ways to kind of make this logic a little bit more simpler. So if I wanted to do quarterly numbers, so actuals quarter to date, it's actually really simple. I can just do calculate total actuals, and then use time intelligence again, and use dates QTD. Again, all I'm passing into a time intelligence function is just dim dates date. So now this is going to show us our quarter to date. And we could drag that on here and show our quarter to date numbers. But really what we want is actually maybe just a slicer selection or something to where we could say, do you want to see quarter to date, year to date, or monthly numbers? And then we could switch the whole view of everything to show, you know, what's your quarter to date variances, what's your year to date variances. So how do we go about creating a slicer? Well, for a start, we don't have a slicer. In a slicer, you have to put a column from one of your tables. We don't have a column that has month to date, quarter to date, year to date in it. So I'm going to show two ways to do this. One is using a disconnected table. A new table, which you can do as well. You could use a function called data table, but I'm actually not going to do that because I can never remember the syntax for it exactly. I have to Google each time. But you can also do enter data, and you can just define a value called just periods, month to date, quarter to date, year to date. And this is the switch example that Chris was referring to earlier. So now we've got a periods table. It's just a disconnect table. It just has 3 values in there. I didn't even name the column. I mean, maybe I should have named that one, but it just has 3 values: month to date, quarter to date, year to date. I could have actually added, what would be quite good actually is to add an order, so I could display which order I wanted to show them in. So month to date first, so I could put 1, 2, 3. But that's what it contains. It's just a really simple table. And now I can drag this on here. And I can show this as a slicer. And yeah, I could even show it. I could show it's kind of horizontal and, you know, single select, and maybe I'll show them as horizontal, so it looks a bit like buttons. There you go. So now it's got month to date, quarter to date, year to date. Now what I need to do is then say, okay, for my values here, total actuals, rather than I want to say, actually look at what's been selected. If it's month to date, then show me monthly numbers. If it's Q to D, show me quarterly numbers. Otherwise, show me year to date. The thing is, if I do that for actuals, I have to do that again for actuals prior year, and then a variance number and all the rest of it. So what I'm better off doing is just changing that base amount, right? So actually creating a new version of that base amount. So now I'm just going to do total amount by period rather than actuals by period or something like that. I'm actually just going to do total amount by period. And then first thing I'm going to do is do selected period. And that's just, we can just use here selected value. And because we've done a single select slicer, we're always going to have one value selected. So this should work. If you're using it on a page that doesn't, you can specify default. So you can say by default. So here we're going to do periods, column 1. Again, should have named it a bit better. By default, say you're using this on a page that doesn't have a single select slicer, let's just do month to date. And then we can do switch selected period. So now we do, if it's month to date, do calculate total amount. So again, it's all going to return a variation of the total amount, and do dates MTD. I mean, to be fair, it's monthly data anyway, but let's just do this for completeness. Dates MTD, dim dates date. Otherwise, if it's QTD, do calculate. I'm just going to copy and paste it. And change MTD to QTD. And then here, it's year to date. We'll do dates YTD. So again, really, really simple. And then dates year to D. If none of those are selected, which is actually impossible because it will default to month to D anyway, let's just put blank. Should say impossible because you never know with Power BI. Sorry, have I not closed these properly? Nope. Sorry for that. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's, but maybe it's my internet actually. I have been having some issues with it. Even it's been really hot here in the UK, and then for some reason, even when it's hot, you get issues with internet and things like that. So you'd think if it's pouring down with rain, hailstorming, that'd be a reason. But does it matter whether you use month to date, year to date, or quarter to date in the variable line? So I haven't used in the variable line. I just returned it in the switch statement. So total amount by period. So here in the variable, all I've done is just pick out what we've got selected in the slicer, and then according to that, we return the right value. So now I can go back to things like total actuals and say, rather than use the total amount, I just change this to say total amount by period. Oh, in the variable line. All right, see, okay, I mean, it's just whatever you want to default to, right? So just in case you were using this on a slicer on a page that didn't have a single slicer selection for that, we could default to something. So when you put something in, it will show monthly values by default, which I think makes most sense. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. So now this is hopefully showing us. Yeah, now we can see that this is now updating to show month to date, quarter to date, year to date. And actually, we don't need to have these other formulas in here. So we've just gone back and changed it. The other way we could have done this, by the way, is using something called calculation groups. And I'm not going to go into that now, just in the interest of time, because there's one more kind of trick I want to show before the end of the session, if that's okay. But I have got a recording of this session, which is actually an hour and a half, where I go through the calculation group approach as well. So I'll put a link to that in the chat. So the last thing I kind of really wanted to show here is if we look at our income statement, so to speak, it looks nothing like the beautiful one that Chris did, because for a start, apart from the formatting and all the rest of it, and no blank lines and all of that, it doesn't even have all of our lines that we want on here. It has, if we compare what we've got in here in our dim headers table to in here, we've got revenue, then net sales, then gross margin percentage, and we can see here half of those lines are missing. We actually don't have gross margin, we don't have net sales, and the reason is because our total amount or everything else is coming from the fact table. So what it's doing is it's saying, even though we've put dim headers on here, this is just coming up as blank, because it's saying net sales. Yep, okay, let me pass through the net sales figure into dim accounts. Let me filter all of the accounts for where the header assignment is net sales, and then pass that through to the finance data. Oh, there are no accounts with a header assignment of net sales, because no account is assigned to net sales. It's assigned to revenue or cost of sales. So it just returns blanks. And actually, if we go into here and we do show items with no data, then they'll come up. They'll just show up with blanks. So what we need to do to fix that is to actually, again, change our measure so that it becomes, I'll put a link in the chat window. We need to change our measure so that it shows, no, not using roll up. What we can do is say, actually, look at this calc type, make this metadata driven. If it's a total line, then we know that this relates to one of the values in that header assignment in our accounts table, or relates to one of those categories. Where it doesn't, but we still want to show on the income statement, we can define what type of calculation we want to do. And this is just our own words, right? So we can say running total. And what we want to do with running total is say, give me the sum of all of the accounts which have an order less than this. So essentially filter this table for gross margin for running total, we can just say it's all the revenue lines plus all of the cost of sales lines, and these are negative, so plus minus negative will give you the difference between them. And then we can do the same thing with operating profit, because it's essentially a sum of all of these where the calc type is total. And actually the calc type will be total anyway, because it's not going to be calculated otherwise. So we can actually utilize this. And then when we have custom calculations, we can just define those custom calculations. So what we can do is we can actually utilize, we can keep our DAX simple. So one thing we could do is we could have a separate measure for net sales. We could have a separate measure for gross margin, a separate measure for gross margin percentage, and that would work, right? So we could do this, so we could say, net margin, net sales equals calculate. I don't know if we've got one for revenue, but total amount by period. Let's just do that. Where our dim accounts header assignment equals revenue less calculate dim accounts where our header assignment is equal to discounts or something like that. I'm not sure if there's whatever it is. And then we can say we define a measure for net sales. And then we can go through here and do another switch statement like we did here and say, if it's revenue, that's fine, just return revenue. If it's net sales, return that. If it's cost of sales, return that. Now, when we come to some of the more complex financial statements, we probably do have to do that because some of them are going to be quite complex. So we can just use a switch or we could use calculation groups. But for something like this, actually, because a lot of them have the same pattern for your income statement, it's quite simple. It's just a lot of them are subtotals. We can just utilize the same pattern for all of them. We could utilize essentially a cumulative total pattern. So if you go into daxpatterns.com and you look at cumulative totals, I won't do that now in the interest of time, you'll see this exact pattern which we're looking at here. It works on dates, obviously, so cumulative total works on dates, and you say, give me all the dates less than the current date in context, or you can do it on any column that has a numerical ordinal value. So here, what we can do is we can define our running total amount. Yep, so let me just go back into here, dim headers, and we'll do new measure, and we'll do running total. Okay, so now what we can do is we can say, okay, so first of all, let's pick out what our order number is in current context. So obviously we've got these headers on the row of our matrix, which also means that we have a corresponding order in context. So far, header order. And again, we can just use selected value. Even though we're not selecting this technically in a slice or anything, it still picks it up because it's a single value in context. Actually, we don't even need to use selected value. We can just use max. So if in case we were showing this where there was no value selected, we weren't showing this on a matrix, it would pick up the maximum one, which is 10, which is your net profit, which again, probably makes sense. If we were just dragging this running total just onto a card on a random page, it would show your total profit. So let's do that. So max dim headers order. Okay, so now what we want to do is say return. We want to calculate our total amount, and actually we can do total amount by period. Yeah, where we do now we want to say our headers. So our dim headers header is less than or equal to our header order, current header order. So here it's going to say less than 1. When it's looking at revenue, it will say less than 3. Looking at here, less than or equal to 6. It could do less or equal. Either will work here because your current one's not going to be in context anyway. It's just going to be a blank value. Can anyone see what might go wrong with this formula? I'm missing something. No. Okay, well, the challenge with this at the moment is I'm just saying dim headers header is less than header order. So this will be change. Yeah, exactly. We need an or, because what this is going to do is going to go through here and say, give it all to me where 1 is less than 1, where 2 is less than 2, 3 is less than 3. And every time it will return blank. So actually we say in the context of all this whole table, so all dim headers or remove filters dim headers, essentially, which is what all does in the calculate. In that context, give it to me, consider the whole scope, and then give me all of those that are less than the current header order. So now we've got a running total. And if we go into here now, so now what we can do is we could say, okay, let's look at what's selected here. And we can do, so now we can do a new FS total measure. FS lines total. So now this is going to be our kind of flexible measure. So we can say, start again, look at what's been selected here. Yep, so look at what's been selected as our calc type. So it's going to be either total or running total, or it will be its own measure. its own calculation. So here we do selected value, and again, as long as we're looking at this on a matrix or something where we've got one of those lines in context, so we say dim headers calc type, and again we can do switch selected calc type. Now, if it's total, let's just do total amount by period. We could have done total amount, but now actually we might as well, since we want our logic to apply first, month to date, quarter to date, year to date anyway. So let's just do total amount by period. Nice and simple. If it's running total, then do running total, because that's again going to go in and say total amount by period where your header order is less than the current header order. And then we can start to define any custom ones. So if we say gross margin percentage, we can just have a measure that has gross margin percentage. It just says what's var revenue equals this, var cost of sales equals this, return revenue minus cost of sales over revenue. I didn't actually create this calculation, but if I did, I could just put in here gross margin, and that would then return for that line. It would return that. So here I'll just put blank. So we're not going to have the gross margin line come up now, but that's fine. FS lines total. And now what we can do is we can just have our FS lines total here. So again, what we can do here is then now go back to our actuals measure and say, again, we need to kind of build this up in the right order of our measure chains and say actuals, rather than saying total actuals equals total amount by period, we've superseded that total amount by period to say now it's FS lines amount, which already includes total amounts by period. So the logic's already there. So now we can just say calculate FS lines total. So now, no, it's broken. What have I done? Okay, so I might have done, let me put this out for a minute. Let me just go back to there. I might have actually not set my data types correctly when I loaded them in. So that might be what you end up with. Let me just go back to that quickly. Let me just check the running total measure. I think with that one, I'm saying one of them's a number maybe or something. So let's have a quick look on there. Yeah, so it's running total, that's my issue. Dim headers, max dim headers order. Yeah, header with header order. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Dim headers order is less than your header order. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully that will work. Now, if I do running total in here. Yep, I think that's working, right? So it's, yeah, because it's not showing actuals. So let's now put that into our actuals. Let's see if this works. So now, yeah, we replace total amount with period with our FS lines total. I can make this PBIX available. I think if you download the examples, I think it kind of has them in there. I think it has all the solution files in there as well. Like it goes into much more detail about doing waterfall charts and all this kind of stuff as well. So I can't remember if I've got it just to this point and saved a version of it. But yep, so now we can see revenue, net sales, cost of sales is minus, your gross margin is now that minus that, your gross margin percentage we didn't calculate. And then we've got operating expenses, so now 3 million less 1.8 million is 1.4 million less 1,910. Oh no, yep, operating profit less that gives you a net income of 1.196 million. So you know we can sense check those numbers and see now. But now our total actuals and our prior year still works as well, because again it's basing it on, it's taking total actuals, so that measure chain is working in that order. But yeah, I think if you go to the aka.ms that PBI income statement, that should work. Sorry, yeah, that was exactly on time. Sorry, I'm running it to the wire there.
No, absolutely perfect, Rishi. I mean, you know, bang on. So absolutely brilliant. And obviously it's always great to see your work and see how you're approaching things. And I think this is an excellent example. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Right. And absolutely brilliant. So that's great.
I see Julian's got a hand up. I think his session's next. So I think
Yes,
that's why.
Julian's next. Yeah, that's
Brilliant.
why. So I'm just going to stop this recording and
I've
start
got
the
a
next
session
one.
on DA100 as well, so I do a lot of stuff on this. I'm really looking forward to this session as well, actually. So stick around if you can. This will be really good.
Yes, definitely. So obviously, yes,